Imagine waking up in a city where every day more people disappear. Not because of war, not because of famine, but because of something invisible, something that no one can explain. Now imagine this continuing to happen. Day after day, more neighbors disappear, more houses become empty, more streets fall silent. That's exactly what happened in London in 1348. And what began that winter would become one of the greatest catastrophes in human history. The story of the Black Death. The streets were silent, not the silence of dawn, nor the silence of a holy day. It was another kind of silence, a heavy silence, the kind that makes dogs howl for no reason, that makes children stop playing, that makes an entire city seem to be holding its breath. In the narrow alleyways of Southwark, south of London Bridge, the first bodies began to appear. Men who had worked at the docks the day before, women who were still buying bread at the market that morning, children. The signs were always the same. First, a devastating fever, then the swellings, dark, swollen lumps appearing in the armpits, in the groin, on the neck, growing to the size of an apple. Skin darkened, bodies weakened, and in 3 days, most were dead, without explanation, without cure, without hope. What was arriving in London that summer of 1348 was the greatest biological disaster Europe had ever faced. It wasn't an army, it wasn't an invasion, it was something far more dangerous, something invisible, the Black Death. The disease had started far away, in the steppes of Central Asia, probably in the regions that today correspond to Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. There lived a bacterium called Yersinia pestis. For centuries it circulated silently among populations of wild rodents, without attracting attention, without altering the human world, until something changed. The bacteria passed from rodent burrows to the fleas that lived on their bodies, from the fleas to the rats that lived near humans, and from the rats to us. The transmission was brutally simple. A flea bit an infected rat. It absorbed the bacteria. And when the rat died, it jumped to the nearest host, frequently a human. The bacteria then invaded the lymphatic system, and buboes appeared, the dark tumors that marked the history of the disease. But there was something even worse. When the infection reached the lungs, it could spread through the air, through breathing, through coughing. At this stage, death was even faster. The plague traveled along the trade routes of the medieval world, on ships, in merchandise, in rat-infested holds, and finally it arrived in England in 1348. First through the port of Melcombe, Regis in the south of the country, then city by city, Bristol, Exeter, Bath, Winchester, until finally reaching the heart of England, London. London was not just a city, it was the economic centre of the kingdom, a bustling port, a commercial hub connecting England, Flanders, Italy, and the Mediterranean. With about 100,000 inhabitants, it was one of the largest cities in Northern Europe, a city full of life, of commerce, of ambition, and that is exactly why the plague found the perfect place to spread there. The streets were narrow, the houses were cramped, entire families slept in the same room. Animals roamed freely through the streets, garbage piled up in the alleys, and rats were everywhere, millions of them. When the disease arrived in London at the end of 1348, the city simply had no way to defend itself. In a few weeks, chaos took over. Abandoned houses, closed markets, doctors unable to explain what was happening. Some believed the disease came from contaminated air, others believed it was divine punishment. The University of Paris even claimed that the cause of the plague was a planetary conjunction between Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. It was the best explanation that medieval science could offer, and it was completely useless. Meanwhile, carts roamed the streets of London every day, collecting bodies, 100 dead, 200, sometimes more. Mass graves were opened outside the city walls. Bodies were piled in layers, without coffins, without farewells, without ceremony. But perhaps the most terrifying thing wasn't death, it was fear. Accounts from the time described families abandoning sick relatives, children fleeing their parents, priests refusing to administer last rites, doctors refusing to visit patients. The social fabric of the city was unraveling. Between 30% and 50% of Europe's population died during the Black Death. Tens of millions of people. Entire cities disappeared. Fields were abandoned. Villages vanished from maps. For a moment, it seemed that European civilization itself might disappear. But the plague also changed the medieval world. With millions of workers dead, labor became scarce. Peasants began demanding better conditions. Wages increased. The feudal structure began to weaken. The medieval world slowly began to transform. But the Black Death was not the only disaster of that century. In the following years, another devastating problem would continue to plague Europe. Famine, harvests failed, winters destroyed crops, and millions of people struggled just to survive. In the next episode, we'll explore the Great Famine that devastated medieval Europe, a silent crisis that killed millions and changed the fate of entire nations, a brutal story that almost no one tells. If you like discovering the darker side of history, subscribe to the Dark Reality channel, because here, history is told without illusions.